you've seen a lot of change and evolution in the business. I wonder if you can think of, anything that stands out as the most important transition that the Appliance Center has made in that 77-year history.
In 2002, my son began to take over the business. We were kind of like a general store. And that's when he decided it was going to be appliances, parts, and service. We've certainly, I think, had a greater amount of success now than we did previously.
Welcome into the Independent Thinking Podcast. This is your host, Rob Stott. Well, we were down in Orlando for primetime. We obviously, a couple thousand of our closest friends and members are there with us, but we get the chance to cross paths with, some members that maybe we wouldn't normally talk to on a regular basis here for the podcast and from the communications team. And obviously our MSMs, our member support managers are out in the field with these guys every day, but they bring those stories to us. It's a nice opportunity while we're in person and together to, meet some people. And one of those people that we met was Bob Hurst down in the panhandle of Florida, kind of that northern edge up Tallahassee-ish area. And he is the president of the Appliance Center, as we come to learn, a business that's been around for a little over 75 years, 77 years is what he tells us on the podcast. And it's a business that was born out of the World War II era in a family that had retail in its veins already and running through its blood. And his grandfather had run a grocery store and went off to war, had to sell the business, came back and noticed an opportunity with all kinds of surplus equipment and things going on and tools and stuff like that. That there was an opportunity to start a retail business there. And fast forward 77 years, and the Appliance Center is continuing on the legacy of Bob Hurst's grandfather, and now in the hands of his son Mark, and continuing to do awesome things down there in the community, and just has overcome a lot of challenges as well, as we found out. So Hurricane Michael not long ago, a couple years ago, ravaged their store and forced them to kind of set up shop in an adjacent area that they owned, but that was sort of a warehouse. And just a fascinating story. Lots to learn from Bob, and always love talking to our members and hearing not only their backstories, but things that they've had to kind of weather and fight for their business over the years, and just so many unique stories and challenges and learnings, I think, come from those conversations. And Bob had plenty of them, so I don't want to waste any more time teeing this up. Let's just dive into it. This is Bob Hurst of the Appliance Center here on the Independent Thinking Podcast. All right, we're back on the Independent Thinking Podcast, and ready to have a fun talk here today with a member down there. We were just in Orlando, Florida, not too long ago for our primetime show. And Bob Hurst, president of the Appliance Center down there. Tell us, what part of Florida are you in, Bob?
Well, I'm in the Panhandle. That's northwest Florida, Panama City. We're on the coast. We're a resort community down here.
Gotcha. All right. Well, always nice to have not only a member, but someone in the Robert family of names. Bob now. Were you always Bob?
I've always been called Bob or Bobby. Yeah.
Yep.
And you are Rob. You've always been Rob.
I've run the gamut. I've been Rob, Robbie, Robert, Bob, Bobby, the whole.
Okay.
Well,
whatever you want to call me. I know the feeling.
One of the most versatile names out there. So awesome to have another one of the Robert families with us. But no, we appreciate you joining. And I got an awesome story to dive into down there with the Appliance Center. But before that, I want to give you a chance. Tell us a little bit about yourself, about Bob Hurst, and your background and path to retail.
Okay, well, of course, I was born into a family that became merchants quite early. We've been in Panama City and merchants since about 1938. But my educational background is in archaeology, believe it or not.
Wow.
I attended school here, and then I And then I studied archaeology in England. And by the way, the Queen just passed away a few minutes ago, is
Saw
what I
that.
heard.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of sad. Yeah, so then I went to Iran and did some archaeological excavation. I taught school over there, taught Middle Eastern history. And about that time, my father was getting pretty aged, and he needed some help here at the store. So I came back and eventually took over the family business. Now we've been in business about 77. Well, we've been in business 77 years. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're the oldest retail store, I think, in Bay County.
But the thing I love too, and we'll dive into the history a little bit deeper, but the retail roots for you guys go back before the store too. I know grocery was a part of the family business as well. Is that right?
That's correct. Actually my grandparents got into the grocery business. My father took it over and enlarged the store. It became, I guess, the largest grocery store in 1940.
Wow.
In the area. But by 1941, the
Yep.
Army called him, and he sold out and left, went off to war, came back after the war, and he had been in the procurement department of the Army. So he knew that all this Army surplus was out there after the leftovers from the war. And that's how he got into that. That was our first business.
That's cool because it kind of shows just sort of, from selling groceries to selling surplus supply and that sort of stuff. It just sort of, it ran in his blood, right? So did you always feel like retail, is it something that has run in the family and was going to be your calling?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
As far as I was concerned, I got interested in history and archaeology, and so that was kind of what I did. And I guess I sent you some information, and it was kind of it was done in a history format.
Yep.
And I've actually written a book, and I do write articles. History articles for the newspaper and the magazines and this sort of thing. So yeah, I still love history, but business retail has been in our family for so long. I'm used to that as well. So, and I can say this much: I'm the second generation, but I think my father and my son probably are handling it a little bit better than I actually handle it. My son is all business.
No, that's awesome to hear. We'll dive, like I said, we'll dive in a little deeper. I do want to ask, we're coming off of, I talked about it at the top, the primetime experience. And so I want to give you a second to talk about it. I know you, correct me if I'm wrong, you took a little stroll around our show floor there at the Gaylord. Were you with us in primetime?
Yes, I was.
Yeah.
My son went down for the first shift, and then I went down for the second. He left, and I stayed. I think we the training classes were good. We enjoyed those. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
we learned
good
a
to
lot.
hear.
Yeah.
Good to hear. And anything from that stand out? What of the classes you went to or the other experiences you had while you were there?
Well, of course, the other experiences, the Palooza, we benefited from the Palooza, and I got a kick out of going to the main event at the Universal.
Yep.
My wife and I ended up at the karaoke bar, and I didn't realize we had so many talented people in the Nationwide.
You're putting it nicely. No, they were actually, there was some really good karaoke and singing going on. It feels like everyone took a stroll through that corner of the city walk there. It was pretty cool, but awesome to hear. Not too far from you guys where you are to be able to hop in and get there. Glad to hear that you guys had a good experience though.
Oh yeah, yeah. And it was, of course, it's convenient being in Orlando. We were about 5 hours away. Yeah.
Sure. Well, so what, if someone walks into the Appliance Center today, what's that customer experience like? What are you guys trying to show them or have them experience? And I know it's interesting. We'll dive into why, but what is that intended or sort of that elevator pitch on what you kind of bring to your local community?
I imagine if somebody walks in our store today, they'll think they may be walking into something like a cross between an office and a warehouse. There's no really good showroom in our place, and of course that is because of Hurricane Michael that hit us in 2018. Hurricane Michael just about tried to destroy us, but luckily our building was damaged badly. We lost a third of the upstairs wall. We lost the roof.
Wow.
Luckily, I had a building next door. It was the old store, and we just moved over there. And it wasn't really a place set up for a showroom, but we have made a makeshift showroom out of it. So people that walk into our store today would think they were kind of walking into a warehouse. And there is a lot of things that's not on display, but we've made our success from reputation. We've been there 77 years, as I said, and we built up a good reputation. People know that we service what we sell. They know that we'll take care of them. We probably do more business from referrals than we do from advertising or anything like that.
Yeah, and obviously, the hurricane that you got we talked about it before we jumped on here. The picture behind you, if you're watching the video version of this podcast, kind of reminiscent of flags going up over rubble. That's actually a photograph, right? I'll let you kind of explain what's going on there, but that's from
Yes,
community during the time of Michael.
yes, that was 2 or 3 days after the hurricane, and our brick facade had collapsed. We had trucks out there in front of it. The wall collapsed onto our trucks, and a photographer happened to be in the area with a model. I guess they were doing shots. So he took a photo of this, and it kind of it's supposed to represent, in a way, the resilience of the community. That we're united, we are strong. We're waving the American flag. That was the kind of impression that the photographer wanted to make with that photograph, and I like it. We've got it in a very prominent place in our store for people to see. Yeah.
Now I know, that area, Florida down there is, a hotbed, if you will, of hurricane activity and things like that. Have you guys ever experienced, I imagine the devastation of Michael unmatched, but have you seen anything like it in your time in retail?
No, never seen anything like Hurricane Michael. It was about a 90-mile wide tornado is what it was. I mean, it leveled everything in its path almost. In a park across the street from us, we had over 80 trees. After the storm, 16 were left.
Wow.
That's one example of the devastation that took place there.
Yeah, I mean, talk about, not to reminisce and think back on that time, but like what was it? Obviously nothing you can prepare for that kind of damage, but talk about, you mentioned the resilience and the ability to kind of pick up, and fortunate to have the area next to you. What's it been like kind of transitioning to that space and while still trying to maintain and run a retail business?
Well, we got moved into our temporary location in about 3 or 4 days. We were up and running, well, maybe 5, and we were back. I mean, we had to keep our business going. We had to supply equipment. I mean, as bad as the hurricane was, it certainly was a selling opportunity as well. And we got back in business real quick. And the other store, we eventually got it put back together. Our showroom, we got the building back together, but we have just about turned it into a warehouse right now, and can't get in there to remodel the interior because we turned it in. It's full of appliances. We've because of this situation we're in right now with the supply chain is so bad right now. So we have our policy is if something becomes available, we just usually order all of them, because if you don't, in a week they're all going to be gone. So we have accumulated quite a lot of inventory as a result, an unusual amount of inventory, and that has detained us from getting our showroom back together, and so that we can all operate in a normal situation.
Sure. No, I obviously sounds like a big. I was going to follow up by asking, what are some of the biggest challenges you face? That obviously sounds like one, not being able to, necessarily work on the old store, well, the new old store, if you will, to get it to where you need to be able to get back in there. But what are some of those other challenges that you've been facing?
Well,
yeah.
Well, of course, I guess this is a day-to-day challenge.
Sure.
And that is showing people what we have, demonstrating to people what we have in stock. We don't have the showroom to display everything we have. A lot of people just base their decisions on trusting us, and what we tell them. And of course, like I said, we've been here long enough. People do trust us. Our success has been, I would say, primarily due to the fact that people know we service what we sell, and we have parts. And I usually tell people, I make them aware of that if they're not. And I always tell them, well, we don't forget you after the sale here at the Appliance Center. But yeah, I don't know if that answers exactly what you were asking, but
no, I mean, I think it shows, the importance of, maintaining sort of that company culture, right? And not only does it, allow you to have success, but then the community sees it, right? So you're committed to that mission of serving what you sell, and it allows you, I think, as a business to take any challenge kind of head on, and when you need to, you can lean on the community that you've built that trust with, right? And
it hasn't been easy.
Yeah,
it hasn't been easy. It seems like since 2018, it's just been one crisis after another. But we're still standing, and are actually doing quite well. I was trying to think about how many we moved. We were in this old building up until about 2002, and then we moved into our new building. And I was trying to think how many appliances that we have probably sold since 2002. In other words, in 20 years.
Yeah.
And I would guess we probably sold, and this is just a wild guess, I would say 38,000 appliances in that length of time, which I guess is a good amount for a small business.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, the challenge of being able to show, customers kind of what you've had during this time while you're in sort of a transition in between, the old showroom and being able to get back into there and everything. Any benefit of, a website, things like that? Have you guys been able to lean on that in terms of, showing customers what you've got, or being able to still get your name out there to, within your community?
Absolutely. As I said at the beginning, we are a resort town, and we a lot of owners are absentee. They live in the north or
Yeah.
somewhere else anyway, and we get a lot of business over the phone. So the website has become a necessity. People can go on there and pick out something and order then by email, or they can phone us and order things. So yeah, it's the website has become a great source, and we right now the front of our temporary headquarters has been torn up. They're doing a streetscape, so you can't hardly get in the front door anyway. But it
Oh,
hasn't
no.
hurt us that bad because we do so much business over the phone. Mhm.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I was gonna that kind of feels like it could be the answer to my next question, which was just gonna be about, you've seen the business run from your father through to you. Now you mentioned your son having a big role now and managing things. And you've seen a lot of change and evolution in the business. I wonder if you can think of, anything that stands out as maybe like the most important transition that the Appliance Center has made in that 77-year history maybe it's even more than one thing, but that's kind of allowed it to have sustained success.
Well, I think the technological age has certainly affected us a lot. Up until about 2002, we operated with no computers, and so that has been a great thing. Now, the other thing is that in 2002, my son began to take over the business, and that is when he decided to get out of all this military surplus, all this hardware we were selling. We were kind of like a general store, and that's when he decided it was going to be appliances, parts, and service. And I think that was a good move. So many of the old time hardware stores here went out. In fact, I don't think there's any left in Bay County. So I think it was a good move just to get into appliances, and we've certainly, I think, had a greater amount of success now than we did previously.
It's kind of a nice segue to it. We kind of mentioned that we dive deeper into the history, and we'll include it too. I know you got some great resources to look at and stories on your website and things like that you shared with us. And
Mhm.
but I want you to walk us through it because you mentioned, obviously prior to 1941 and World War II, there, your grandfather or father was the
It was my
grandfather.
grandfather that originally
Grocery.
started the grocery business,
Yep.
but he was getting up on an age, and my father came in there and really took it over.
And then that's when he comes back from war, realizes the opportunity with the surplus. So kind of walk us through sort of the path that the Appliance Center has been on since then.
The path that we've been on since then. Well, we we became actually we took on the name Surplus Sales Service and got our license in about 1948. And in the 50s, we expanded into a second store, and it had some of the same type merchandise, but he also got into the frozen food business.
Wow.
Selling freezers, and then you buy this food plan, and the customer could order um, frozen foods of any kind. We could go through and make a list, and then we would deliver them to the customer. The frozen food, and that was a trend that happened in the 50s. Freezers had come out, frozen food would become a big thing, and that's what happened. So he got into that. Now it didn't last. Somewhere in the 60s, he got out of that, abandoned that, and we got rid of our second store, and then came back and just had the store we have now. And that's in a nutshell
Yeah,
how
it is.
things
Well, the frozen
evolved.
food is that kind of the intro to appliances, or did it come before that? Because you think frozen food freezers, the
Oh
opportunity
yeah.
there, was that the first step into appliances?
Well, he got my father got into appliances quite early. Sometime probably about 1950 is when he started selling appliances. But I can remember in the old store, it was just you'd go in there, it was an old hardware type store, wooden floors, and he'd have some appliances sitting in there amongst everything else. Yeah, there are still a few of those. You go to South Georgia and you can
Sure.
find some of those places. uh, and but eventually in the 70s, he built another built another store behind our old one, and he made a showroom, and that's where that became a warehouse and a showroom for our appliances. So that's how that kind of evolved. And then, like I've already said, in
Yeah.
2002, my son came along, got rid of all that other stuff, and concentrated on appliances.
Seeing you think to the early days, and again, I think it's because you have a unique perspective of sort of where the business was and what it is now. The transition of like what appliances were then, you think of design and just sort of how basic they were to what you see now in an appliance store, in these packages, and the sleek edges and curves and the technology that's going on. What just reflect on that a little bit, just how appliances have evolved.
Yeah, it of course, back in the old days, there was no electronics. Everything was mechanical. Um, it, the idea of packaging didn't seem to me to come along. I don't remember any selling packages to people until recently. It just seemed like people back in the old days just bought one or two appliances at the time, and of course you didn't have the boom, the building boom like you have
Yeah.
today. Back then, Panama City, was just a sleepy little coastal town up until I think recently. Now, yes, we've had the beach and we've had tourists for a long time, but it was the old type mom and pop hotels and motels, and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. And today, of course, it's condos, and uh, people actually own places. So like I say, we deal with a lot of absentee owners of places. Yeah.
No, it's interesting, and I mean, you talk about the history too, and it's neat to see. I love talking to our members that have been around for decades, and businesses that are 75 plus years old, and you kind of get to learn a lot from that. I think just the staying power of the business, and
Yeah.
you talked a little bit about the ability to evolve, and kind of what your son has done with focusing the business. What for continued success moving forward? What does that look like? And maybe whether it's for your own business or advice you to impart on other members that you bump into. What would you tell them? That you've learned that you think that they would find important in their to apply in their own business to make sure that they can continue to succeed.
Well, I think the small businessman is the small appliance man is faced with the big box stores, and how do we deal with those? And I think this is probably nothing new that I've got to say, but you know, offering personalized service, having your own service department, having a parts department. I think that's the kind of thing that where we can compete. We have something that the big boxes don't have, and I think if you want to have a successful business, that's what you've got to do, and I'm sure that's nothing new. Everybody's heard it before, but again, it's true. And I think if people will stay on that path, that they will have a successful business. Yeah.
No, I mean, something to be said about wise words, and whether you've heard them before, having them reiterated, I think, is important too. So
Right.
it's the more you hear it, the more it kind of rings true, and you realize that, well, maybe it's not. I hear it a lot, but there must be something to it if people keep talking about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, Bob, I appreciate that. We've had a fun time talking today. I appreciate you peeling back the layers on the Appliance Center, and sharing some information, and some cool history too. Some great photography again, if you're watching the video version of this, and can wish you continued success down there in Florida. And again, just appreciate the time.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to do this.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like we'd reach out again too. You mentioned the service side. There's a whole other layer of conversations we could have around service and that side of the business. So maybe we'll have to have a follow-up podcast one of these days before long. See how things are going on that side.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. And thanks again to Bob for taking the time. And, if you were watching the video version, setting up in his sort of, like he said, the makeshift office down there in Panama City, and, just sharing some incredible stories. Like I said at the top, always fun to hear those stories, and see what members what kind of knowledge they can impart on the rest of the membership, and advice they can share. So lots of it coming from Bob and the Appliance Center down there, and much continued success. Here's to the next 77 years. So we appreciate it. And as always, we appreciate you listening to the Independent Thinking Podcast, and we'll catch you next time.